In the fog-draped shadows of Carlisle Manor, Lady Evelyn Carlisle lies dead, poisoned, a sapphire brooch pinned to her lifeless form. Its cursed secret, a map to untold riches, whispers of betrayal. Was it her desperate husband, envious companion, debt-ridden nephew, or loyal maid who slipped cyanide into her tea? As Hercule Poirot unravels a web of forged wills, hidden compartments, and deadly darts, one question haunts: who stole the map? And what truth died with her? Chapter 1. The Shadowed Manor. In the gloaming of a chill November evening in 1932, Carlisle Manor stood like a sentinel against the encroaching mist of the English countryside. Its Gothic spires pierced the twilight, and the mullioned windows glowed faintly, as if reluctant to reveal the secrets within. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fading roses, carried on a breeze that whispered through the ancient oaks lining the gravel drive. Inside, the grand halls, adorned with tapestries of forgotten lords, echoed with a mournful quiet, broken only by the stifled sobs of servants clustered in the shadowed corners. A tragedy had struck, one that would summon the keen mind of Hercule Poirot, the Belgian detective whose reputation for unraveling the impossible preceded him like a herald. In the opulent drawing-room, Lady Evelyn Carlisle lay lifeless, her body arranged almost artfully on the Persian rug, her silk gown pooling around her like spilled ink. Her emerald eyes, once sharp with secrets and wit, stared blankly at the coffered ceiling, their fire extinguished. A single sapphire brooch, an heirloom of untold value, was pinned askew on her bosom, its deep blue facets catching the flickering candlelight in a macabre dance, as if mocking the stillness of its wearer. The room itself was a study in elegance. Velvet drapes framed tall windows. A mahogany table held a silver tea service, and a vase of wilting roses exhaled a cloying sweetness. Yet beneath the refinement lurked something sharper, a faint, acrid tang that suggested poison, a silent assassin in this tableau of grief, fear, and suspicion. Sir Reginald Carlisle, Evelyn's husband, stood by the fireplace, his broad shoulders slumped, his face etched with lines that spoke of both sorrow and strain. A shipping magnate whose fortunes had waned, he had reportedly quarreled with his wife over the sale of the brooch to salvage his empire. Amelia Thorne, Evelyn's companion, sat rigid in a high-backed chair, her plain features taut, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. A spinster of modest means, she had devoted years to Evelyn, yet whispers among the staff hinted at envy, perhaps of the very jewel now pinned to the corpse. Victor Langford, Evelyn's nephew and heir, lounged against a bookcase, his handsome face schooled into nonchalance, though his fingers twitched, betraying nerves. His gambling debts were the talk of London's less reputable circles. The brooch could erase them in a single transaction. Eliza Dunn, the young maid, hovered near the door, her apron twisted in trembling hands. She had served the fatal tea, her simple demeanor now clouded with dread. Poirot's grey cells, those tireless engines of deduction, began their work. He noted the crumpled note clutched in Evelyn's hand, its ink smudged but legible. "The secret must die with me." The words hung in the air like a spectre, deepening the mystery. What secret? The brooch, rumored to hold a hidden compartment from its colonial origins, seemed central. Evelyn, born to aristocracy, had inherited it from her grandfather, a governor in India, where tales of cursed gems and lost treasures clung to it like dust. Poirot's gaze swept the room. cataloguing details. A misplaced glove near the teacup, its silk incongruous with the servant's attire. A faint scuff on the rug, suggesting a struggle or haste. The tea service, oddly askew, as if disturbed by more than a spill. The servant's whispers painted Evelyn as a woman of contradictions, gracious yet guarded, generous yet prone to sharp words. She had been agitated in her final days, speaking of curses and betrayals. Her once vibrant stood frozen, each face a mask hiding truths. Sir Reginald's voice broke the silence, hoarse with emotion or artifice. "Find who did this, Mr. Poirot. She deserved better." Amelia's lips tightened. Victor's smirk faltered, and Eliza stifled a sob. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice soft but piercing. "Rest assured, mes amis, the truth cannot hide from Hercule Poirot." Then, from the upper floors, a distant crash echoed through the manor, sharp and unnatural, as if the house itself protested its secrets. The assembled gasped, eyes darting upward. Someone or something lurked in the shadows, watching. The hook tightened. Who among them had silenced Lady Evelyn? And what secret did the sapphire brooch conceal? Chapter 2. The Gathering Suspects. The library of Carlisle Manor was a cavern of secrets, its towering bookshelves laden with leather-bound tomes that seemed to whisper of betrayals long buried. The air was heavy with the scent of aged paper and polished oak, mingling with the faint musk of cigar smoke that clung to Sir Reginald Carlisle's tweed jacket. The November chill seeped through the leaded windows, their diamond panes distorting the foggy grounds beyond into a spectral haze. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's centre, his small, meticulous figure a stark contrast to the brooding grandeur around him. His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, swept over the assembled household, each face a canvas of grief, fear, or carefully veiled guilt. The death of Lady Evelyn Carlisle, poisoned in her own drawing-room with the sapphire brooch pinned to her lifeless form, demanded answers, and Poirot's little grey cells were already weaving the threads of this intricate tapestry. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his Belgian accent precise yet melodic, "a crime has been committed, most heinous, and the truth hides among you." His voice carried a quiet authority, commanding the room as he paced, his patent leather shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor. Inspector Japp's eyes met Poirot's briefly, then darted away as if fearing exposure. "This is outrageous," he growled, his voice hoarse. "Evelyn was my world. I'd never harm her." Yet the tremor in his tone hinted at secrets unspoken. Amelia Thorne, Evelyn's companion, perched on a velvet-upholstered chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her plain grey dress and severe bun contrasted sharply with the opulence of the manor, marking her as an outsider in this world of wealth. A spinster of 40, she had served Evelyn for a decade, tending to her whims and ailments with a devotion that bordered on obsession. Yet the servants' gossip painted a different picture. Amelia, envious of Evelyn's jewels and status, had once been overheard muttering bitterly about her lot. Her eyes, red-rimmed but dry, flickered with something. Sorrow or calculation? When Poirot addressed her, she lifted her chin. "I loved Lady Evelyn like a sister," she said, her voice steady but cold. "She trusted me with everything." Poirot noted the faint tremble in her fingers, a crack in her composure. Victor Langford, Evelyn's nephew and heir apparent,
lounged against a bookcase with a studied nonchalance that failed to mask his unease. His tailored suit and slicked-back hair marked him as a man of charm, but his reputation as a gambler preceded him. Debts piled high in London's gaming dens, and the sapphire brooch represented salvation. A single sale could clear his slate. His smirk, when Poirot's gaze lingered, was defiant. "Don't look at me, old man," he drawled, lighting a cigarette with a flourish. "I was at the theatre when Aunt Evelyn took her last sip." But his fingers twitched, betraying nerves, and Poirot's keen eye caught the absence of a ticket stub in his pocket, a detail Victor seemed eager to ignore. Eliza Dunn, the young maid, hovered near the door, her apron twisted into knots by trembling hands. Her round face, usually rosy, was pale as chalk, her brown eyes wide with fear. She had served the fatal tea, a fact that hung over her like a guillotine.
Away. Turning to Amelia, he softened his tone. "Mademoiselle Thorne, you were closest to Madame. Did she confide in you about this secret?" Amelia's lips tightened. She spoke of the brooch's history, yes. Her grandfather brought it from India, said it held a treasure's key. She was protective of it. Her words were measured, but Poirot caught a flicker of resentment, perhaps it being merely the confidant, never the owner. Victor's interrogation was met with bravado. "I'm no saint, Poirot, but murder? Absurd." Yet his alibi wavered. The theater ticket he claimed to possess was nowhere to be found. Eliza, questioned last, dissolved into tears. "I only poured the tea, sir. She was kind to me, even gave me a locket like hers." Poirot's interest sharpened. Evelyn's locket, similar to the brooch, was a potential red herring, suggesting theft gone awry. Clues began to emerge, each a thread in the tapestry. The misplaced glove near the teacup, silk and delicate, belonged to none present, hinting at an outsider or deliberate misdirection. The teacup itself bore smudged fingerprints, as if someone had wiped it hastily. Poirot examined the crumpled note again, its handwriting hurried, possibly forged. The brooch's scratch, noticed earlier, suggested tampering, perhaps an attempt to open its rumored compartment. Evelyn's background unfolded through the servants' accounts. Born to aristocracy, she had inherited the brooch from her grandfather, a colonial governor whose tales of Indian treasures were family legend. Her recent agitation, coupled with talk of curses, painted a woman haunted by her legacy. The library's atmosphere grew taut, the suspect's glances darting like daggers. Sir Reginald's pacing intensified, Amelia's composure frayed. Victor's smirk faded, and Eliza's sobs quieted to whimpers. Poirot's questions, though gentle, cut deep, exposing motives. Reginald's financial desperation, Amelia's suppressed envy, Victor's reckless need, Eliza's quiet desperation for her ailing mother. Jap, impatient, pressed for arrests, but Poirot demurred. The weight of autumn's chill. Thorns glinted like tiny daggers, and the air carried the faint perfume of decay, mingling with the damp earthiness of the surrounding lawns. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the morning mist, stood beside a trellis, heavy with fading roses, their petals scattered like clues across the gravel path. Here, in this quiet corner of the estate, he sought to unravel the enigma of Lady Evelyn Carlisle's death, a poisoning marked by the enigmatic sapphire brooch, its secrets as elusive as the fog curling through the yew hedges. With Inspector Japp occupied at Scotland Yard, Poirot turned his attention to Amelia Thorne, Evelyn's companion, whose guarded demeanor hinted at truths buried beneath her devotion. "Mademoiselle Thorne," Poirot began, his voice a soft cadence. "You knew Madame Carlyle better than most. What did she fear in her final days?" Amelia, her gray dress blending with the mist, stood stiffly, her hands clasped as if to anchor herself. Her face, plain yet sharp with intelligence, betrayed a flicker of unease. "She confided in me," she said, her voice low, almost swallowed by the rustle of leaves. The brooch was no mere ornament. It concealed a map to lost Indian sapphires, a family secret from her grandfather's days in the Raj. Her words opened a door to motive, wealth beyond imagination, a treasure that could transform lives or end them. Poirot's gray cells hummed, his methodology as precise as a watchmaker's. He had already noted the brooch's faint scratch, a clue suggesting tampering, perhaps to access its hidden compartment. Now, in the garden solitude, he pressed Amelia further. "Did Madame speak of this map often?" Amelia's eyes darted to the manor, its Gothic silhouette looming like a judge. "Only recently," she admitted. "She was troubled. Said the brooch carried a curse, that it brought betrayal. I thought it nonsense, but her fear was real." Her tone wavered, and Poirot caught the scent of a psychological thrill. Morning progressed with interviews, each suspect revealing fragments of Evelyn's past and their own motives. Victor Langford, the debt-ridden nephew, met Poirot in the billiard room, where the clack of ivory balls punctuated the tension. Victor's charm was strained, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night, or guilt. "You were with Madame hours before her death, oui?" Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Victor shrugged, cue in hand. "I asked for a loan, as always. She refused, the stingy old bat." His sneer faltered under Poirot's gaze. "I was at the theatre after. Check the ticket." But the ticket, when produced, was unstamped, its edges pristine. A red herring? Or proof of absence? Victor's gambling debts, whispered to exceed £10,000, made the brooch's value a siren call. Yet his bravado seemed a mask, hiding fear or calculation. Eliza Dunn, the maid, was next, questioned in the servants' hall where the air smelled of polish and trepidation. Her hands trembled as she recounted serving the tea. "Milady was agitated, sir. Kept touching the brooch, muttering about a shadow from India." Her locket, a cheap imitation of Evelyn's sapphire, caught Poirot's eye, a potential clue or another false trail suggesting theft gone wrong. Eliza's motive was modest but poignant. Her mother's illness demanded funds, and petty thefts from the pantry had already stained her record. "I'd never hurt her," she insisted, tears brimming. "She gave me this locket, said I was loyal." Poirot's gentle nod masked his scrutiny. Loyalty could hide darker impulses. Sir Reginald Carlyle, the grieving widower, met Poirot in his study, where ledgers lay open, revealing the decay of his shipping empire. His face, lined with strain, bore the marks of a man cornered by fate. "Monsieur Carlyle," Poirot said, "your wife opposed selling the brooch, did she not?" Reginald's jaw tightened. "We argued, yes. It could have saved us, but she was stubborn, said it was her family's soul." His voice broke, but Poirot noted a letter among the ledgers, hinting at embezzlement. "All," she had written, a cryptic phrase that deepened the enigma. Red herrings abounded, clouding the truth. The silk glove near the teacup, belonging to none in the household, hinted at an outsider or a clever distraction. The arsenic vial, too easily found, seemed a deliberate misdirection. Poirot's logical deduction process took shape. The cyanide, fast-acting yet subtle, required access to the tea service,
available to all suspects. The smudged fingerprints suggested a gloved hand or a hasty wipe, pointing to premeditation. The brooch's engravings, if authentic, could unlock the map. But why leave the jewel behind? Was the motive treasure, revenge, or something deeper? As twilight descended, the manor's fog-shrouded grounds took on an eerie stillness, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. Poirot retired to his guest room, its four-poster bed and heavy drapes a cocoon of contemplation. His little grey cells worked tirelessly, aligning facts. Evelyn's fear, the forged note, the tampered brooch. He sketched a timeline on a notepad, each suspect's movements a puzzle piece. Amelia's knowledge of the brooch's secret, Victor's shaky alibi, Reginald's financial desperation, Eliza's locket, all swirled in a dance of deception. The narrative flow, rich with atmospheric tension, built toward a crescendo. Poirot stepped onto the balcony, the cold air sharpening his senses. The manor's silhouette loomed against the dusk, its windows like eyes guarding secrets. A shadow moved in the upper hall, fleeting but deliberate. A servant, or something more sinister. Poirot's heart quickened, his mind alert. Then, a discovery in Evelyn's desk drawer shifted the game. A forged will, drafted in Amelia's meticulous hand, disinheriting Victor and naming Amelia as heir to the brooch. The revelation electrified the air, pointing to betrayal within the inner circle. As Poirot closed the drawer, a floorboard creaked behind him, too heavy for chance. He turned, but the hall was empty, save for the echo of retreating steps. The manor held its breath, and Eliza's desperation. The crumpled note in Evelyn's hand. The secret must die with me. And the forged will found in her desk pointed to betrayal. But the truth remained elusive, hidden in the manor's shadows. As the grandfather clock in the hall tolled 11, a soft footfall broke the silence, deliberate yet cautious, like a thief treading on velvet. Poirot, his eyes adjusted to the dim glow of a single candle, slipped from his bed, his movements as precise as his waxed moustache. He crept to the door, ear pressed against the oak, and heard the faint rustle of fabric moving down the corridor toward Evelyn's study. The intruder, unaware of scrutiny, betrayed their presence with a creak of the floorboards. Poirot, clad in a silk dressing gown, followed, his patent leather slippers silent on the polished wood. The study door stood ajar, a sliver of lamplight spilling into the hall, and within a figure rummaged through Evelyn's desk, papers rustling like dry leaves. Poirot stepped into the light, his voice a quiet blade. "Monsieur Langford, what do you seek at such an hour?" Victor Langford, Evelyn's nephew, froze, his handsome face paling as he clutched a letter. His tailored jacket was askew, his hair disheveled, a far cry from his usual polish. "Just memorabilia, Uncle Hercule," he stammered, the nickname a weak attempt at charm. But Poirot's keen eyes missed nothing. The letter in Victor's hand, half concealed, bore Evelyn's seal, its contents partially visible. Words of disinheritance, cutting Victor from her will. "Memorabilia does not require stealth," Poirot said, plucking the letter with a gloved hand. It confirmed Evelyn's intent to exclude Victor, citing his gambling as a betrayal of family honor. The discovery tightened the noose. Victor's debts, rumored to exceed £10,000, made the brooch's value a lifeline, or a motive for murder. The study, with its mahogany desk and shelves of leather-bound ledgers, was a shrine to Evelyn's meticulous nature. Her diary, already examined, lay open, its final entry cryptic. "The brooch knows my shame." Poirot's grey cells, knowing its slow-acting cyanide, would allow her to slip away unnoticed.
The tea service, examined that morning, showed smudges on the cup, suggesting a gloved hand or deliberate wiping. Eliza, the maid, had prepared the tea, but Amelia had served it, a detail that shifted suspicion. Poirot filed this away, his mind a ledger of facts and deceptions. The interrogation paused as the household gathered for a tense dinner in the dining hall, where crystal chandeliers cast a cold glow over the mahogany table. Silver clinked like accusations, and the suspects' faces were masks of propriety, strained by fear. Sir Reginald, his broad frame hunched, avoided Poirot's gaze, his earlier confession of financial quarrels with Evelyn now tinged with guilt. Amelia, seated opposite, cut her pheasant with surgical precision, her eyes darting to Victor, who drank heavily, his bravado crumbling. Eliza served, her hands trembling, her locket, a cheap echo of the brooch, gleaming at her throat. The dialogue crackled with 1930s restraint, each word a potential clue. "Monsieur Langford," Poirot said over the clink of glasses, "your debts are a noose, are they not?" Victor's laugh was sharp. "And your mustache a distraction, Poirot." The retort drew a chuckle from Reginald, but Amelia's lips tightened, her silence louder than words. Poirot's observations deepened character portraits. Reginald's grief seemed genuine, but shadowed by desperation. Amelia's devotion masked a calculating mind. Victor's charm hid fear. Eliza's simplicity cloaked quiet desperation. The brooch, now in Scotland Yard's custody, remained the enigma's heart. Its rumored compartment, possibly opened by Victor's key, held a map to Indian sapphires, a treasure that could drive any of them to murder. Yet why leave the brooch behind? Was the motive greed, revenge, or something deeper, tied to Evelyn's cryptic note? As dinner ended, the manor's atmosphere grew oppressive, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Poirot returned to the study, re-examining the forged will found in intending to check the safe where the brooch had been stored before its transfer to Scotland Yard. The safe, hidden behind a portrait of Evelyn's grandfather, was a steel guardian of secrets. As he approached, a piercing scream shattered the silence. Eliza, standing in the corridor, her face ashen. "The safe, sir," she cried, pointing to its door ajar, its lock visibly tampered. Poirot's torch revealed the truth. The brooch's secret compartment, once rumored to hold the map, gaped empty, its contents stolen under the cover of night. The revelation electrified the air, the manor's shadows seeming to close in. Who had breached the safe and when? Was the map taken before or after Evelyn's death? The suspects, summoned by the scream, gathered in their nightclothes, their faces a gallery of shock and suspicion. Reginald's voice shook. "This is madness." Amelia's eyes gleamed. Victor's hands clenched, and Eliza sobbed, her locket glinting accusingly. Poirot's voice cut through the chaos. "The thief is among us, mes amis, and the killer, perhaps the same." The cliffhanger loomed as a distant door slammed, footsteps fading into the night. Someone had fled, or was it another ruse to mask the truth of the sapphire brooch? Chapter 5. Alibis Unraveled. The morning room of Carlisle Manor, bathed in the cold light of a November day in 1932, was a stage for unraveling truths. Sunlight pierced the tall windows, its beams slicing through the fog that clung to the estate like a conspirator's cloak. The air carried the faint scent of beeswax and lavender, a veneer of civility over the raw wound of Lady Evelyn Carlisle's murder. Hercule Poirot, his small frame poised with the precision of a conductor, stood before the assembled suspects, his waxed mustache gleaming under the chandelier's muted glow. The sapphire brooch, central to the poisoning that claimed Evelyn's life, held a rumored map to Indian treasures, a motive that wove through the household's secrets. The tampered safe, its empty compartment discovered the previous night, had escalated the mystery, and Poirot's gray cells were now in full motion, dissecting alibis and motives with surgical care. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his Belgian accent a velvet thread weaving through the tension. "The truth is a delicate web, and your alibis are its fragile strands. Let us see which break under scrutiny." Inspector Japp, leaning against a rosewood sideboard, nodded grimly, his notebook open. "We've got cyanide confirmed, Poirot," he said, his voice rough with impatience. "The doctor's report came in. Blue lips, convulsions, classic signs. But the safe's tampering changes things. Someone wanted that map." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind cataloging the clues: the scratched brooch, the forged will, the smudged teacup, the empty compartment. Each suspect, Sir Reginald, Amelia, Victor, Eliza, stood on the precipice of exposure, their faces masks of defiance or dread. Sir Reginald Carlyle, Evelyn's husband, sat heavily in a leather armchair, his broad shoulders slumped as if bearing the weight of his failing empire. His alibi, a supposed evening at his gentleman's club in London, had been his shield, but Poirot's inquiries had pierced it. "Monsieur Carlyle," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, his voice soft but probing. "Mademoiselle Thorne, you served Madame's tea, and you knew of the brooch's secret. Did you also know of her cruelty?" Amelia's eyes flashed, a rare crack in her composure. "She could be unkind," she admitted, her voice low. "She mocked my station, my spinsterhood, said I'd never rise above service." The revelation painted a psychological portrait, a woman whose loyalty masked resentment, her intellect suppressed by Evelyn's barbs. Poirot noted her steady hands, a contrast to her earlier tremors, control or calculation. Her motive deepened, revenge coupled with the promise of the brooch's treasure. Victor Langford, the nephew, lounged against the mantel, his tailored suit rumpled from a sleepless night. His theater alibi, already weakened by an unstamped ticket, faced further scrutiny. "Monsieur Langford," Poirot said, holding the ticket aloft, "the usher at the Gaiety recalls no one of your description that evening. Where were you truly?" Victor's charm faltered, his cigarette trembling between his fingers. "I stepped out for a smoke, missed the curtain," he muttered, but his eyes darted to Amelia, as if seeking an ally. Poirot's mind ticked. Victor's debts, the brooch's value, the key that matched its scratch, all pointed to greed, yet his nervousness suggested fear of exposure. A red herring surfaced, a sapphire shard found in his room, too convenient, perhaps planted to shift blame. Eliza Dunn, the maid, hovered near the door, her apron twisted into knots, her locket glinting like a smaller echo of the brooch. Her role in preparing the tea made her a target, but her tearful confession shifted the lens. "Mademoiselle Dunn," Poirot said gently, "you took small sums from the pantry, oui? For what purpose?" Eliza's sobs broke free. "Me mum's sick, sir, needs medicine. I took a bit, but I'd never poison milady." Her desperation was palpable, her motive modest but real. The locket, a gift from Evelyn, suggested loyalty, but Poirot wondered, could desperation have pushed her to betrayal? Or was she a pawn in another's game? The morning room's atmosphere mislead. The silk glove, unclaimed, hinted at an outsider, or a calculated distraction. Poirot's timeline took shape. Evelyn's agitation, her cryptic diary entries, the forged will, the tampered safe. Each suspect had opportunity, but motive and method remained elusive. Reginald's affair and financial ruin, Amelia's resentment and forged will, Victor's debts and false alibi, Eliza's theft and desperation all wove a tapestry of suspicion. But the killer's thread was yet to be pulled. The manor's grounds, shrouded in mist, amplified the tension. Poirot stepped outside, the gravel crunching under his shoes, to examine the footprints. They led to the river's edge, where the trail vanished, as if the culprit had waded into the current or staged the scene. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and decay, the river's murmur a low warning. Poirot's mind raced. The cyanide required planning, the safe's tampering haste. Was the map stolen before or after the murder? The brooch's empty compartment suggested a killer who knew its secret. But why leave the jewel behind? Dinner, that evening, was a study in unease, the dining hall's chandeliers casting a cold glow over the mahogany table. Silver clinked like accusations, the suspects' voices strained with 1930s propriety. "This is intolerable," Reginald snapped, his wineglass trembling. Amelia's silence was icy, Victor's jests hollow, Eliza's hands unsteady as she served. Poirot, seated at the table's head, observed each gesture, his little grey cells aligning facts. A guest, an old family friend dining with them, mentioned Evelyn's fear of curses, a detail that deepened the psychological thread. "She spoke of shadows from India," he said, unaware of the weight his words carried. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Was the curse a delusion or a metaphor for betrayal? As the meal ended, Poirot rose, his voice cutting through the murmur. "The killer walks among us, mes amis, their heart as cold as the poison they used." The words landed like a guillotine, the room falling silent. Then, with small frame silhouetted against the fogged panes, held the sapphire brooch under a magnifying glass, its deep blue facets glinting like eyes guarding a mystery. The poisoning of Lady Evelyn Carlyle, marked by this very jewel, had left a trail of clues, a scratched setting, a forged will, a tampered safe, and a note proclaiming, "The secret must die with me." The empty compartment discovered in the safe the previous night had escalated the stakes, and Poirot's little grey cells were now a whirlwind, piecing together the threads of betrayal that wove through the household. The brooch, returned briefly from Scotland Yard for Poirot's inspection, was the heart of the enigma. He pressed a tiny lever hidden in the intricate gold filigree, and the compartment sprang open with a faint click, revealing nothing. The map to the fabled Indian sapphires, rumored to lie within, was gone, stolen, perhaps, in the chaos of Evelyn's death. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his Belgian accent soft yet resonant. The killer knew its value and struck to claim it. The scratch on the brooch's setting, noted earlier, suggested force, as if someone had pried it open in haste. Was the theft post-mortem, or had Evelyn herself removed the map, sensing danger? The question gnawed at him, each possibility a thread in the tapestry of deceit. Poirot's methodology was a blend of logic and intuition, his grey cells aligning facts with the precision of a watchmaker. The suspects, Sir Reginald Carlyle, Amelia Thorne, Victor Langford, and Eliza Dunn, each bore motives as vivid as the conservatory's blooms. Reginald, the embattled shipping magnate, needed funds to salvage his empire and hide his affair. Amelia, the loyal companion, harbored resentment beneath her devotion. Victor, the gambling nephew, saw the brooch's salvation from debt. Eliza, the desperate maid, might have acted out of need for her ailing mother. The cyanide in the tea, confirmed by toxicology, required access and intent, pointing to someone intimate with the household's rhythms. But the empty compartment shifted the lens. The killer sought not just the forged will found in Evelyn's desk, bore her meticulous handwriting, a damning clue. Yet was it motive or a red herring to deflect suspicion? Victor, questioned in the billiard room, was a study in fraying bravado. His tailored suit was rumpled, his cigarette smoke curling like his lies. "Monsieur Langford," Poirot said, examining the key Victor carried, its edge matching the brooch's scratch. "This key, did it open the compartment?" Victor's laugh was brittle. "A childhood trinket, Poirot, nothing more." But his alibi, a theater visit, had collapsed, and the sapphire shard found in his room, too conveniently placed, suggested a plant to incriminate him. Poirot's mind ticked. Victor's debts made the map a prize, but his nervousness hinted at fear, not guilt. Was he a pawn in a larger scheme? Eliza, met in the servants' hall, was a trembling figure, her locket gleaming like a smaller echo of the brooch. "Mademoiselle Dunn," Poirot said gently, "you prepared the tea, oui? Did you see anyone tamper with it?" Her sobs broke free. "No, sir. But I heard Milady argue with someone, couldn't tell who. Sounded like Sir Reginald, but strange." Her words introduced a twist, a voice mimicking Reginald's, suggesting impersonation. Her motive, desperation for her mother's medicine, was real, but her simplicity seemed genuine. The locket, a gift from Evelyn, was another red herring, hinting at theft gone awry. Sir Reginald, in his study, was a man cornered by fate. His ledgers, open to Poirot's scrutiny, revealed embezzlement, a secret Evelyn had threatened to expose. "Monsieur Carlyle," Poirot said, "your wife knew of your financial misdeeds, did she not?" Reginald's face crumpled. "She did, and we fought. But I loved her." His affair, confessed earlier, added shame to his motive. But the arsenic vial in the stables, unrelated to cyanide, felt like a clumsy distraction, perhaps planted to mislead. The conservatory's atmosphere grew oppressive, the orchids drooping like witnesses to betrayal. Poirot's deductions progressed. The cyanide, accessible in the pantry, required safe's tampering suggested haste post-murder. The map's theft was the key. Did the killer act alone, or with an accomplice? Dialogues, sharp with 1930s propriety, crackled during a tense luncheon in the dining hall. The chandeliers cast a cold glow, silver clinking like accusations. "Monsieur Poirot," Amelia said, her voice icy, "your questions border on presumption." Poirot smiled thinly. "And your composure, mademoiselle, borders on artifice." Victor's jests were hollow, Reginald's silence heavy, Eliza's hands unsteady as she served. A guest, an old family friend, mentioned Evelyn's fear of betrayal, deepening the psychological thread. "She spoke of shadows watching her," he said, unaware of the weight his words carried. As evening fell, rain lashed the manor's windows, the storm's roar amplifying the tension. Poirot reviewed the clues in his room, the four-poster bed and heavy drapes a cocoon of contemplation. The empty compartment, the forged will, the mimicked voice, all pointed to a killer who manipulated perceptions. He stepped into the hall, intending to re-examine the safe, when a shadow flitted past, swift and deliberate. His torch caught only a glimpse, a figure in a dark cloak, fleeing toward the garden. Poirot followed, the rain soaking his overcoat, the gravel path slick underfoot. The figure vanished into the fog, but a new clue emerged, a discarded handkerchief, monogrammed with an A, near the rose garden. Amelia's? Or another ruse? The manor's creaks and the storm's howl merged into a symphony of suspense, the air electric with unseen threats. The cliffhanger loomed as thunder clapped, masking the sound of retreating footsteps. Had the killer struck again, or was the shadow another piece of the puzzle guarding the secret of the sapphire brooch? Chapter 7. Twists in the Fog. The fog that enveloped Carlisle Manor on that November evening in 1932 was a living thing, curling through the estate's ancient oaks and pressing against the Gothic windows like a conspirator's breath. Its tendrils muffled sound, transforming the manor's creaks into whispers of deceit, as if the house itself, colluded to the rose garden, had found the handkerchief near a thorn bush, its silk sodden but the A unmistakable. Amelia's initial? Or a deliberate misdirection? He summoned her to the library, where the fire's embers cast flickering shadows on the leather-bound tomes. "Mademoiselle Thorne," Poirot said, his Belgian accent a velvet blade. "This handkerchief, yours, perhaps?" Amelia's face, usually composed, paled as she took the item. "I lost one like it," she stammered, "but it's common enough." Her fingers trembled and Poirot's gaze sharpened. He produced a vial, found in her room during a discreet search by Inspector Japp's men. "And this, mademoiselle, cyanide, no?" Amelia's eyes widened. "For headaches," she insisted, "prescribed by a chemist." Chemical analysis, however, revealed traces of cyanide matching the poison in Evelyn's tea. The clue was damning, but Poirot wondered, was Amelia too obvious a suspect, or was her composure a mask for guilt? The investigation deepened, each suspect's alibi unraveling like threads in the fog. Poirot met Victor Langford in the billiard room, where the clack of ivory balls echoed the tension. Victor's key, matching the brooch's scratch, had been dismissed as a childhood trinket, but Poirot pressed further. "Monsieur Langford, you were seen near the manor at the time of the murder, not at the theatre. What say you?" Victor's smirk faltered, his cigarette trembling. "A misunderstanding, Poirot. I was meeting a friend." His vagueness, coupled with the sapphire shard planted in his room, suggested a frame-up. But his debts, exceeding £10,000, kept him in the frame. Poirot noted his nervous glance toward Amelia, hinting at collusion or fear. Sir Reginald Carlyle, questioned in his study, was a man fraying at the edges. His ledgers, open to Poirot's scrutiny, confirmed embezzlement, a secret Evelyn had threatened to expose. "Monsieur Carlyle," Poirot said, "your affair and financial ruin gave you motive, oui?" Reginald's face crumpled. "I begged her to sell the brooch, but she refused. I'd never kill her." His alibi already broken. Motive, desperation for her mother's medicine, was real. But her simplicity seemed genuine. Her locket a gift from Evelyn, not a clue to theft. Poirot's logical deductions progressed, his mind a ledger of facts and deceptions. He reconstructed the tea service. Eliza prepared the tea, Amelia served it, but the cyanide's presence required access to the pantry, open to all. The smudged fingerprints on the teacup suggested deliberation. The tampered safe, haste. The handkerchief, though pointing to Amelia, felt too convenient, like the sapphire shard in Victor's room. The forged will, naming Amelia as heir, was a bold move. But was it her own? Or a frame to divert suspicion? The mimicked voice, reported by Eliza, suggested a killer with theatrical flair, someone who knew the household's dynamics intimately. The manor's fog-shrouded grounds amplified the tension, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and impending rain. Poirot walked the garden path, retracing the footprints to the river, now blurred by the storm. The trail's abrupt end suggested staging, a killer covering their tracks or luring pursuit into the fog. He returned to the conservatory, where orchids drooped like witnesses to betrayal, and reviewed his notes. The cyanide, the empty compartment, the forged note in Evelyn's hand, all pointed to a premeditated act. But the map's theft suggested a secondary goal. Why leave the brooch behind if the map was the prize? Was the motive greed, revenge, or a deeper betrayal tied to Evelyn's cryptic diary? "The brooch knows my shame." Dialogues, sharp with 1930s propriety, crackled during a tense luncheon in the dining hall. The chandeliers cast a cold glow, silver clinking like accusations. "Monsieur Poirot," Amelia said, her voice icy, "your accusations are presumptuous." Poirot's smile was thin. And your denials, mademoiselle, are practiced. Victor's jests were hollow, Reginald's silence heavy, Eliza's hands unsteady as she served. A guest, an old family friend, mentioned Evelyn's fear of betrayal, deepening the psychological thread. She spoke of eyes in the shadows, he said, unaware, his voice firm. Non, mon ami. The true killer smiles among us, their mask still intact. The room froze, the fog outside pressing closer. Then a telegram arrived, its contents electrifying. An anonymous buyer, claiming the stolen map, demanded a rendezvous at the boathouse at midnight. The suspects' faces, Reginald's shock, Amelia's calculation, Victor's fear, Eliza's tears, were a gallery of guilt and dread. The cliffhanger loomed as the clock ticked toward the hour, the fog swallowing all sound save the distant creak of a gate. Had the killer set a trap, or was the rendezvous the key to unmasking the secret of the sapphire brooch? Chapter 8. The Rendezvous Trap. The fog that cloaked Carlisle Manor on that November night in 1932 was a conspirator's veil, swallowing the boathouse in a spectral haze that muffled sound and blurred form. The air was heavy with the scent of damp wood and river mud, the distant lap of water against the dock, a low, ominous pulse. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the chill, stood in the shadows of the boathouse, the sapphire brooch, returned from Scotland Yard for this trap, clutched in his gloved hand. Its facets glinted faintly under his torch, a beacon to lure the killer who had poisoned Lady Evelyn Carlisle and stolen the map from its hidden compartment. The telegram, announcing an anonymous buyer's rendezvous at midnight, had set the stage, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to unmask the culprit. The suspects, Sir Reginald, Amelia, Victor, and Eliza, lurked nearby, their motives a tangled web of greed, resentment, and desperation. Poirot had orchestrated the trap with precision, informing each suspect separately of the rendezvous, claiming the brooch held a clue to the map's whereabouts. "The killer will come," he had told Inspector Japp, who waited in the manor with 2 constables, ready to pounce. The boathouse, a weathered structure perched on the river's edge, was a perfect stage. Its creaking timbers and fog-shrouded isolation amplified the tension, the air thick with the promise of revelation. Suggested desperation or guilt. Poirot noted his trembling fingers, a contrast to his gruff denial, and filed it away. Amelia Thorne followed, her grey dress blending with the fog, her eyes gleaming with a fervour that chilled the air. "The map is mine by right," she declared, stepping towards the brooch. Her voice, usually measured, cracked with ambition, revealing the depth of her resentment. Poirot raised a hand. "Mademoiselle Thorne, you forged Madame's will, no? To claim the brooch's secret?" Amelia's face hardened. "She mocked me, kept me in her shadow. I deserved more." Her admission, raw and unguarded, was a breakthrough. But Poirot wondered, was her boldness a confession, or a desperate bid to claim the prize? The cyanide vial found in her room, matching the poison in Evelyn's tea, weighed heavily. Yet its discovery felt too convenient, a possible red herring. Victor Langford burst in, his tailored suit dishevelled, his charm replaced by panic. "Amelia, you snake!" he shouted, accusing her of planting the sapphire shard in his room to frame him. "Monsieur Langford," Poirot said, his tone calm but piercing. "Your debts made the map a temptation, oui? And your key fits the brooch's compartment." Victor's laugh was brittle. "I'm no killer, Poirot. She's the one scheming." His finger pointed at Amelia, but his eyes darted to the brooch, betraying greed. The forged note in Evelyn's hand, matching his handwriting, kept him in the frame. Yet Poirot sensed a deeper game, perhaps a collusion gone awry.
Eliza Dunn, the maid, lingered at the boathouse's edge, her locket glinting as she confessed to eavesdropping. "I heard them all, sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Milady's quarrels, the map talk, everyone wanted that brooch." Her access to the pantry, where cyanide was stored, made her a suspect, but her tearful simplicity suggested a pawn, not a mastermind. Poirot's mind ticked. The tea service, prepared by Eliza but served by Amelia, was the murder's conduit, and all had opportunity. The smudged finger ledgers, examined that morning, revealed letters hinting at collusion with Victor. "Monsieur Carlyle, you conspired with your nephew, oui, to pressure Madame for the brooch's sale?" Reginald's face crumpled. "We discussed it, yes. But I didn't know he'd go so far." Victor's denial was swift. "Lies! I acted alone." The exchange muddied the waters, suggesting a partnership fractured by betrayal. Poirot's timeline took shape. Evelyn's poisoning, the safe's tampering, the map's theft, all pointed to a killer who planned meticulously, yet acted in haste post-murder. The rendezvous reached a fever pitch as the fog parted, revealing a new figure, a disguised man, cloaked and masked, claiming to be the map's buyer. "I was promised the Sapphire's secret," he said, his voice muffled but cultured. Poirot, unfazed, demanded he unmask. The figure complied, revealing a rival collector, Lord Harrington, known in London's auction circles. "I offered Evelyn a fortune," he said, "but she refused. I came for the map, not her death." His alibi, verified by Japp's telegrams, cleared him of murder, but his presence confirmed the map's allure. The suspect's reactions, Reginald's shock, Amelia's calculation, Victor's fear, Eliza's tears, were a gallery of guilt and relief. The boathouse's air grew electric, the creaking timbers and lapping water a chorus of suspense. Poirot's voice cut through. "The killer is here, mes amis. Their heart as cold as the poison they used." The suspects frozen. Then a sudden whistle broke the silence. A poisoned dart, its tip glinting, arced through the fog, aimed at Poirot's heart. He dodged, the dart embedding in the boathouse wall with a dull thud. Chaos erupted. Reginald shouted, Amelia gasped, Victor lunged for the door, and Eliza screamed. The shooter, cloaked in the fog, vanished before Japp's constables could pursue. The cliffhanger hung heavy, the fog swallowing all sound save the river's murmur. The dart, brooch, its empty compartment a silent witness to murder, rested on a velvet cushion, its facets glinting like accusing eyes. The poisoned dart, narrowly missed at the boathouse rendezvous, had escalated the stakes, confirming the killer's desperation. Poirot's little grey cells, tireless in their pursuit, had woven the clues, scratched brooch, forged will, smudged teacup, stolen map, into a tapestry of betrayal. Now, with Inspector Japp and his constables flanking the exits, Poirot prepared to unmask the culprit. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his Belgian accent a velvet blade slicing through the tension. "The secret of the sapphire brooch is not jewels, but betrayal. A poison of the heart, as deadly as the cyanide in Madame Carlyle's tea." The suspects, Sir Reginald Carlyle, Amelia Thorne, Victor Langford, and Eliza Dunn, sat or stood in a taut semicircle, their faces a gallery of dread, defiance, or feigned innocence. Reginald's broad shoulders slumped, his eyes shadowed by grief or guilt. Amelia's grey dress and severe bun masked a calculating gaze.
Victor's tailored suit was rumpled, his smirk replaced by unease. Eliza, clutching her locket, trembled like a leaf in the fog. The air, heavy with the scent of wilted roses and wax, crackled with anticipation. The manor's creaks, a chorus of suspense. Poirot's methodology, a blend of logic and psychology, unfolded with theatrical precision. "Let us reconstruct," he said, pacing before the fireplace, its embers glowing like the embers of truth. Madame Carlyle was poisoned with cyanide, a swift and silent killer, administered in her tea. The brooch, with its secret compartment, held a map to Indian sapphires, a treasure that lured greed. Yet the map is gone, the compartment empty, and the brooch left behind. Why? His eyes swept the room, lingering on each suspect. The killer sought not the jewel, but its secret, and nodded, dismissing him from the circle of guilt, though his secrets lingered like shadows. Eliza, trembling, was next. "Mademoiselle Dunn, your access to the pantry and your mother's illness gave you motive, but your heart is too simple for such cunning. The locket, a gift from Madame, was no clue to theft, but a mark of her kindness." Eliza's sobs quieted, her locket glinting as she clutched it, absolved but shaken. Victor, his bravado crumbling, faced Poirot's scrutiny. "Monsieur Langford, your debts and false alibi pointed to greed, and your key matched the brooch's scratch. But the key was a childhood trinket, the note a forgery. You were manipulated, no?" Victor's nod was reluctant, his eyes darting to Amelia, a silent accusation. Poirot turned to Amelia Thorne, his voice sharp. "Mademoiselle Thorne, you are the architect of this crime." The room gasped, Amelia's face paling, but her eyes defiant. "You served the tea, knowing its poison would act slowly, allowing an alibi. You knew the brooch's secret, confided by Madame, and you forged her will to claim it. The handkerchief, monogrammed with your initial, was no accident. Your fingerprints on the brooch's setting, forced open, betray you, and the dart at the boathouse, your desperate attempt to silence me." Amelia's composure cracked, her voice a hiss. "You have no proof." But Poirot produced the forged will, its handwriting hers, and the handkerchief, its silk, matching one found in her room. "Madame discovered your forgery," he continued, "and threatened to expose you. Her mockery, your spinsterhood, your station, fueled your rage, a psychological fire that burned hotter than greed. You poisoned her, stole the map, and planted clues to frame others." The revelation unfolded like a storm breaking, the psychological thriller element sharp. Amelia's suppressed rage, nurtured by years of servitude, had erupted in a calculated act. "She mocked me one last time," Amelia spat, her voice raw. "I was her equal, yet she treated me like a servant. The map was my due." Her confession, torn, electric. The fog outside pressing against the windows like a witness to justice. Poirot's voice softened, a note of sadness in his tone. "The human heart, mes amis, is a labyrinth." And Mademoiselle Thorne's was twisted by resentment. The brooch's secret was her obsession, but it was Madame's cruelty that lit the fuse. Amelia, now silent, stood as the constables bound her wrists, her eyes hollow with defeat. The resolution was satisfying, yet poignant, the truth a bitter draught in the opulent room where Evelyn had died. The suspects, absolved but shaken, processed the revelation. Reginald's grief deepened, his affair a regret he'd carry. Victor, chastened, vowed to reform, his debts a lesson. Eliza, clutching her locket, found solace in her innocence. The map, recovered from Amelia's room, was a final twist. It held no treasure, only sentimental sketches from Evelyn's grandfather, a jest that mocked Amelia's greed. The brooch's true secret, a hidden love letter from Evelyn's youth, remained unopened. A private closure Poirot would respect. As the constables led Amelia away, the manor's creaks softened, as if exhaling its secrets. Poirot stood by the fireplace, the brooch in his hand, its sapphire dimmed by the truth. "The little grey cells prevail," he said to Jap, his voice a quiet triumph. The room fell silent, the chandelier's light steady, the fog outside a fading veil. Yet a final ripple of suspense lingered, a faint creak from the upper hall, unnoticed by all but Poirot, hinted at a shadow still watching. Had Amelia acted alone, or was another secret buried in the manor's depths, waiting to surface? Chapter 10. Echoes of Justice. The dawn broke over Carlisle Manor with a tentative golden glow, piercing the fog that had cloaked the estate in secrets for days. The November air of 1932 carried the crisp scent of frost and fallen leaves, a quiet requiem for the tragedy that had unfolded within the manor's Gothic walls.
Previous night, as the constables led her from the drawing room, had restored a fragile peace to the household. Now, as the sun rose, Poirot prepared to depart, his task complete, but his heart heavy with the human frailties he had exposed. The suspects, Sir Reginald Carlyle, Victor Langford, and Eliza Dunn, gathered in the morning room, their faces etched with relief, regret, and quiet transformation. Inspector Japp, his notebook tucked away, stood by the fireplace, its embers a faint echo of the case's intensity. "Well, Poirot," Japp said, his gruff voice softened by respect. "You've done it again. Wrapped it up neat as a parcel." Poirot's smile was modest, his waxed moustache twitching. "Mon cher Japp, the truth is never neat, but it is always inevitable. The little grey cells, they do not rest until justice is served." Poirot turned to the group, his voice a velvet cadence. "Mes amis, this manor has seen great sorrow, but also redemption. Let us reflect on what has been learned." He began with Sir Reginald, whose broad shoulders seemed less burdened, though his eyes carried the weight of grief. His financial ruin and affair, exposed during the investigation, had painted him as a suspect, but his love for Evelyn, however flawed, was genuine. "Monsieur Carlyle," Poirot said, "you sought to save your empire, but at what cost? Madame's death was not your doing, yet your secrets wounded her." Reginald nodded, his voice low. "I'll make amends, Poirot. I've written to my creditors, and I'm ending other entanglements." His resolve, born of shame, promised reform, a path to honor Evelyn's memory. Victor Langford, the nephew, stood by the window, his tailored suit less polished, his bravado replaced by a chastened air. His gambling debts and false alibi had cast suspicion, but the forged note and sapphire shard were Amelia's ploys to frame him. "Monsieur Langford," Poirot said, "your recklessness brought you close to ruin."
Mystery demanded closure. The map, recovered from Amelia's room, was no treasure guide, but a sentimental jest. Sketches of Indian landscapes drawn by Evelyn's grandfather, a colonial governor, with no hint of sapphires. The treasure, Poirot mused, holding the brooch, was Madame's legacy, not gold or gems. Yet a final twist awaited, discovered when Poirot examined the brooch one last time. A second, hidden compartment, smaller, overlooked, revealed a folded letter, its ink faded but legible. It was a love letter from Evelyn's youth, written to a suitor her family had forbidden, explaining her guarded heart and her attachment to the brooch. "My love is locked within," she had written, a poignant echo of her cryptic diary. "The brooch knows my shame." The revelation softened the room's atmosphere, the suspects' faces reflecting a shared sorrow. Evelyn, beneath her aristocratic poise, had been a woman shaped by loss, her secrets as much a burden as the brooch's curse. Poirot chose not to share the letter's contents, tucking it into his pocket. "Some truths," he said, "belong to the heart, not the law." The gesture was a quiet mercy, preserving Evelyn's dignity in death. The manor, its Gothic spires softened by dawn, seemed to exhale its secrets. The fog had lifted, revealing the rolling lawns and distant river, where footprints had once hinted at escape. Poirot's deductions had cleared the red herrings. The silk glove, Evelyn's own. The arsenic vial, the gardener's. The sapphire shard, a frame. Amelia's fingerprints, the forged will, the poisoned dart, all pointed to her alone, her rage a psychological fire that consumed her. The mimicked voice Eliza heard, sounding like Reginald, was Amelia's final ruse, a theatrical touch to deflect blame. As Poirot prepared to leave, he stood on the manor's steps, the brooch restored to Reginald, who vowed to keep it as a memorial. "Au revoir, England," Poirot said to Jap, his voice tinged with melancholy. "The human heart is a mystery deeper than any crime." Curious about the detective's exit, or a shadow of the manor's past, unwilling to rest. The question hung unanswered, a whisper of mystery that Poirot, with a faint smile, chose to leave behind. The secret of the sapphire brooch was resolved, but Carlisle Manor, like the human heart, held echoes that would never fully fade.